Hi. So, I'm standing here in my exhibit. It's just newly finished, and it's a really interesting time in the world, and it's an interesting time for me. I just finished setting this up. It's my first solo show, and it was a very solitary time shooting it, and then a very solitary time putting it up. But then on the other hand of that, just like right now where we're all very alone, but we're doing that for a community, right? So I feel like even though I had no idea when I started, those parallels are very real in what's happening for the show right now. So when I applied for this show, I reached out to artists, particularly in this community that I love and are my friends and that I look up to, and they just filled me with all this fantastic advice on how to present, how to sort of put what I was thinking into something to go out into the public, right? And for this ask, and then and I was doing that right at this point where I lived in Hawaii for a year, and I was coming back to this community that I love, and so there was a lot of thought into that, how much I love this place, how sort of alone I was feeling in this other place, and how I had this sort of cushion of a community to come back to. And so I had all of that help from that point. And then I came back to Ketchikan in May of this year, and I got to start shooting. So I was shooting these pictures in a very solo way, a very on my own. I'm marching through the woods, absorbed in self, in place, in nature. And so I shot these images, and then I did my first one was Rainbird, sort of in that those summer months as I came back. And then I shot the Ward Lake one in the fall. And then the final one in Whitman I shot right in the winter. So as I was doing this very solitary work, I had a thread back to Hawaii with my awesome printer, Eric at Big Island Printing, who I collaborated with on how to print these big images on this art paper, and this big giant gold medal one. And so he was awesome, this sort of thread back to my time in Hawaii, where I really got into this solo photography, or this not solo, but meditative photography walk. I've done some of it, but in Hawaii I really had the time on my own to be exploring this other place. So I still in this is that thread, and this final piece just arrived in the mail today. So that's my last piece there, and then talking more about how this is such a community thing for me. I've had the Arts Council, who I adore, really stand behind me in what I'm doing, and such a beautiful support there. And Kathleen and Katie and Jeff have really been so wonderful and encouraging and fantastic. And then just other so many people in the community have like reached out to help, and so putting on the show has been like thinking towards it, thinking of like all of sort of the community support to put it up, and then have this beautiful party, this event that the community would come and be a part of. But of course, that none of that has happened, and so we've had to like switch it and see what that looks like in this other way. So then through all of this community support, I was able to go ahead and put the show up, and in this like incredibly solo way. Like I can't be in the gallery with anyone else. And so everyone sort of set everything up for me. We've been working like over the phone and figuring this all out and back and forth. And then it was, my moment to set it all up. And so through that very extremely solo last 3 days, I've set up this exhibit, and I want to talk a little bit about the actual exhibit and some of my thoughts behind it, and how it evolved into what it is right now. So when I was thinking about how to put together this exhibit, I had some pieces, some thoughts that were out in the world. And so in the last 5 years, I've been doing a lot of energy study, a lot of flow work, and learning so much from my teacher, Jeff Knopfs. And through that learning, I've also connected back to interests that I've had in the past, Qigong, Tai Chi. I'm a sucker for a Kung Fu movie, but more than that, I love the philosophy behind those martial arts. And so I've dove into the philosophy of Bruce Lee, and then of course, Bruce Lee's philosophy is a lot is based on the Tao and these concepts. So that piece, that energy, that seeing without seeing, that flowing like water, the finger pointed at the moon. You don't look at the finger because you'll miss all the heavenly glory. So those concepts were really part of how I wanted to approach the photography part. So that became this walking meditation, going through the woods with my camera being something that I've had along with me for most of my adult life. And before that, even as a kid, my uncle Paul Paris was a photographer in Los Angeles, and he was a huge influence on me and what art means and how to see the world through your camera and how to tell the camera what you want to see. So through my Uncle Paul, I learned many things, but one of the things that really connects to what I've done here is that when you're taking a picture and you really want a steady image, you always get the best image on an out breath. So with that, that idea of the breath and this idea of meditation, and my camera being this thing that helps me see in a different way. So that's the combination between how I've come up with this thing that seems to be evolving, which is all part of it, all part of the flow. So when I got out to these places, and I really wanted to choose places that we're all familiar with in Ketchikan, and places that I thought a lot about when I was in Hawaii, and thinking about coming back to my home. So the show starts out with Rainbird, then it goes to Ward Lake, and then to the Whitman Trail. And I really shot, for each of these, there's 20 images per place. And I spent at least 2 hours, and I went a distance that you probably could go in about 5 to 10 minutes as I shot. So incredibly slowly moving through and seeing all of these different things. So I shot all of that, and then of course I edited it down. When I edit, I tend to maybe lighten things up a little bit, darken them a little bit, and I will do a fair amount of cropping to get what I want, but for the most part, these are exactly what I saw when I was experiencing that. So I really wanted to bring the viewer, you, into that frame of mind when you're walking through this. So I didn't want to put images on the wall. I wanted to get you to move because I want this to be a moving meditation. And I also didn't place the images all in a line. I placed them with the idea of where you look when you would walk down a trail and see these things. So a picture of a tree, branches is up high, a mushroom is down low, to get you to feel that flow of moving through the woods. And then each of these images is attached here to the ceiling on strings, and then those strings are anchored with rocks. And I went ahead and I went back this last month to each of those places and revisited them, and then collected the rocks from those places and hauled them down to my car. So I got to do that, and then some of the neat things that have happened as the exhibit has gone up that I didn't expect, and that I'm just like absolutely delighted by, is that in this space and the way they're all hung on the strings, it breathes. So anytime there's any kind of movement or a door's open, it all breathes in and breathes out. And that is so cool, such magic. So that's it. This is the only thing that I did that's not on paper. This is a metal print in a triptych. So it's 3 pieces, and those 3 pieces match the size of the windows here. I had a much different idea of what I would do I knew I wanted something large in the space, but I had something absolutely different in mind, and this is what happened. So that's like such a fantastic thing about doing this whole process from a year ago and having these ideas, and then how it's all changed and flowed into this. So I don't think I'm going to walk you through it. I think I'm going to let that part be what Jason shows you in the video he's creating. And anyway, yeah, I'm delighted to take you on this walk and let you see what I saw and see what you see in turn.